Welcome to Wandering and Pondering.
The podcast of two overly opinionated teenage girls who wander through life, pondering the world around them. I'm Lola,
I'm Ava.
and welcome to episode 1, Boys Will Be Boys.
So, just to do a bit of an introduction, we are two teenage girls. We are in our later years of high school, so we're coming towards the end of it. We both really like philosophy and social issues.
We talk about them a lot in our free time, and we figured that we would share these opinions with the rest of the world through a podcast.
Yeah, because, everybody and their mom is making a podcast. So like, well,
why not us?
Exactly. And we like to think we're pretty interesting. Our friends tell us we're interesting, but they also seem bored half the time. But you know what? We're not that unique, so I'm sure there's people like us.
If this appeals to you, it appeals to you.
Yeah.
We kind of figured that the, appeal of our podcast would be that we are talking about social issues, feminism, capitalism, all these things that we experience alongside everyone else in the world, but through a teenage point of view, through the lens of teenagers and how all of these things relate to teenage culture and how our generation, plays a role in all of these societal structures.
Because people like to ignore the opinion of teenagers because we're young and annoying, which is completely true.
Completely true.
But a lot of their reasons, a lot of reasons for people ignoring young people's opinions is because they haven't lived. But there's a difference between not living and just because you've lived thinking you know things.
Exactly. We've lived through a different age, and so I guess we have insight on growing up in that age and the details that are specific to our generation. Things that adults actually aren't familiar with.
Yeah.
And things that we actually know more about them.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And we'll do a bit of a backstory on us.
Mm-hmm.
We've been friends since probably fifth grade. We've known about each other for a longer time.
We went to summer camp.
We went to summer camp together. It's the first time she played "Set Fire to the Rain" for me on the piano, and we to this day, every time we sit down and buy a piano, we have to play it. And if we're in a feeling up to it, we like to sing it.
Oh, of course.
She does the singing, I do the screaming. But yeah, so we've been friends for a really long time. We stopped being friends for maybe a year or two.
About a year, like in 7th grade.
Yeah, about a year. And then we became friends again because we thought, we're like, oh shoot, we're only the two of us in this class. We're only gonna have each other. And since then, we've been the bestest of friends. Of course.
We only continue to grow closer. So there you have it.
And, we've also kind of just merged into the same person, too.
Yeah.
We're still different people. But since we spend most of our time talking about the same things, we just kind of get each other.
We get each other. We figured our opinions were similar enough to complement each other where we can have this podcast, but also different enough that we offer different points of view, nuanced opinions,
And maybe we'll even have new revelations.
Oh, exactly. That's the best.
Oh, yeah.
When you're talking, Ava and I bring out the best in each other, so...
Most of the time.
Most of the time. When we're talking to each other, sometimes, you realize, oh, wait, you have a revelation about a certain topic due to the other's opinions and experience, so that's great.
Exactly. And so we're just... Now, the reason why we called our podcast Wandering and Pondering. So, we're two young girls, and throughout elementary school, when you're not playing Winx Magic Fairies.
Oh, yeah.
Or
grade-wide manhunts, those were
like
fun.
I never played that.
You never
I didn't
played?
like running.
Oh.
I don't like running. But, and also, too, what if they touched me? That's kind of crazy. But... Yeah, when you weren't busy doing those things, you were walking around the school field with your friends, gossiping or just yapping about random things. We've always loved to do that.
Oh, yeah.
And we would wander, and recently we would wander around and ponder different things, because I like to say that if you ever don't know what to talk about, you just go outside. Because there's so much different stimulation, it'll bring up things, bring things up. So we would wander around, and it would bring up things for us to ponder. So that's why we called it Wandering and Pondering. Originally, we were going to go outside to talk. But,
But
you know,
the microphone
high
quality,
quality mics is
it's sad, yeah.
expensive.
Expensive. And it sounded terrible.
Oh
So
yeah, it was like horrible, like ambient noise in the back. I'm like, that would make me lose it.
that was the original plan, but I think the name still applies here.
Yeah.
And we still gossip, don't get us wrong.
Oh yeah.
But that, little schoolgirl gossip turned into more interesting conversations.
Yeah.
I guess we should get to
We
our
should get into our first
topic.
episode.
Boys will be boys. So, in this, we were going to talk about a very general topic that comes up a lot in our conversations, teen boys
And feminism.
and feminism. So, how do teen boys react to feminism? How does it make them feel? The role that they play in the feminist movement, and how, I guess,
Us as feminists and women feel about teen boys.
Exactly.
Because since we are in high school, we are not an all girls school, so we interact a lot with guys, and our main group is mostly men.
Yeah.
I think actually now we're
50-50 now.
But before it was like what?
Yeah.
What's the math on that one, Lola?
I don't know.
It's okay.
Not
we're
a
gonna go with
dividable number.
Like
But
40, 60, or like 35.
I think it was like 3 to 5.
Someone's gonna clock me for this. They're gonna call me dumb. It's okay.
It's okay.
So yeah.
Um.
Do you want to start us off?
Yeah. So I guess the main question that Ava and I ask ourselves: why are teenage boys so hateful? And what inspires this hate in them? And why is it that it seems that every single one of them is so hateful? There's no exceptions.
Yeah, and we are aware that hate is a strong word, but that is kind of why we chose to use it, because when we really think about our experiences, the only word we can think of is like true disdain or hate.
And not to say that every teenage boy is filled with pure hate, but it does seem
they aren't filled. They aren't hateful creatures.
No,
but they hate certain things so deeply that are unsubstantiated.
The most common reaction associated with them towards feminism seems to be hate, and even the ones who are more aware, less hateful, do still participate in the system.
Harmful behaviors.
In harmful behaviors, every single one of them.
Oh yeah.
No exceptions. Not just teenage boys either, grown men, but we have more experience with people our age.
Yeah, personally, I don't talk to anybody who's older or younger than me, so I cannot speak on anything else. So yeah. Well, just so we can really clear everything up, we don't think men and boys are born to hate women.
No, exactly.
Recently we had someone tell us that they think it comes from testosterone, which is not true. Testosterone does make you more aggressive, but you could never.
It doesn't make you a misogynist.
Yeah, you couldn't. You're just a chemical, a body chemical, could not make you hate a thing. It can make you act a certain way, but not towards a specific thing.
And this statement just implied that misogyny was innate in men, and that means
the boys will be boys statement.
The boys will be boys statement, arguing that little boys hate women. As they come out of the womb, they're just destined to grow into women haters.
It's like how the boys will be boys statement is used so widely.
Yeah.
If a boy's teasing you, oh, he's just boys will be boys. That means he likes you.
If a boy acts out, does something irresponsible, boys will be boys. They need to.
If boys are overly aggressive, boys will be boys. That's probably when I first realized I hated statements like that. Because things aren't just the way they are. There's always reasons for it. But it seems like with boys, it's kind of crazy because it seems to always be the same. Like, it's so widespread. We were talking to our teacher about this, and he was like, oh yeah, I don't want to say all boys are the same because that's not true. But as a teacher, all guys go through this, and I don't know why.
And it's weird because there are the common arguments of conforming to societal pressures, all that stuff. Yes, there's a system that they benefit from. But what we're asking ourselves is, why is it that it's every single boy? Every single boy will participate in harmful behaviors and hateful behaviors, as they've said. And so I guess we're going to dissect why.
Yeah. So first, there's obviously, toxic masculinity.
Yep.
That's the number one villain. People don't like to think about toxic masculinity because they think it's just a way for women to hate on men and just think men are the worst. No, women talking about toxic masculinity, of course, it affects us as well. Everybody's affected by toxic
Oh,
masculinity.
yes.
But I feel like a lot of times the context it's used from, it's actually saying to defend men. People who are raised by single mothers or have older siblings that are girls, like older sisters, they tend to be better when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
misogyny or whatever because, they're the female figures whip them into shape. But teen boys will always go around with each other using femaleness and women as an insult or as a
Mm-hmm.
weapon. Like, oh, don't cry like a girl. Why are you screaming? You sound like a girl. Or you scream like a girl. You do this like a girl. There's even, okay, we do swear in this podcast. There's even this thing that used by boys and adults. Oh, don't act like a pussy.
Don't act like a pussy. Someone said that to me the other day.
Really?
And no, well, not to me, but sorry, they used that word as in, I'm not a pussy. And I was like,
And what does that mean? You're not a vagina. You're
yeah.
not a woman. So they weaponize being a woman against other men. And even if you don't partake in that type of thing, you still, one way or another, spread these harmful things that are associated to women.
And I think people don't quite understand to what extent the small things help spread and reinforce the system in place.
Exactly.
Because women have gotten the right, well, where we live, they've gotten the right to vote, they have legally the same rights as men. I think it's quite easy to forget to what extent we are still second class
Oh yeah.
citizens. Small things, these sayings, don't be a pussy, you're acting like a girl, reinforce this almost subconscious idea that femininity is inferior.
Oh yeah.
When little boys learn these statements, because, as we said, misogyny isn't innate, little boys learn these statements, they see these things through media and multiple different facets, we'll get there eventually, but it reinforces this idea, and then they see other women as being inferior to them.
Exactly.
And then that just continues to be reinforced throughout their lives. And that, I think, is what is a large contributor to misogynist culture and what makes all men misogynist.
Exactly.
To a certain extent.
Because, I mean, you can't blame everybody for not, like, digging deep into the wrongs of society and culture and whatever. But the biggest problem is misogyny is so deep rooted into our culture as humans. There's nowhere in the world where misogyny isn't at the root of a lot of things. Because, back in the day, you were allowed to hate women and to view them as property. For example, recently I was reading a book about rape, and it said, I mean, this is kind of something that people who know feminism already know, but there's something about seeing things written in words and written well is kind of crazy, where how a lot of the time before, even not even that long ago, and also in certain countries and areas where a rape isn't considered a crime against the woman, it's a crime against a man, whether it's her father, her husband, and the woman is dishonored, and so is the man from being raped. It really just goes to show how being a woman and being of the female sex is such a bad thing. And of course, we have moved on as a society. We know we're not supposed to beat our spouses. Well, most people most people know that that's not a good thing. But and we can't own women anymore. But since stuff like that are such at the base of how we work as a society, since we can't do that anymore, men have found new ways to exploit that.
Exactly. I think I told you this. I was watching Bridgerton.
Oh my god, I love Bridgerton. Everybody talks about how hot the guys are, but the hottest one is from Queen Charlotte. They're all kind of fugly. If I'm actually, please don't cancel me.
God.
But they're all fugly except for the one from Queen Charlotte.
It elicited a few thoughts around, or just like reminders, things that we
Yeah.
all obviously know, that women were viewed as property, that, just even the idea of taking a man's last name wasn't that long ago. And the systems that still structure the way that our society works are those systems just evolved. They're not different, they're the same thing. And I think people often forget how recently women were viewed as not even legally equal.
They
How
weren't
do I
even
say this?
people.
They weren't even people, they were pieces of property. And how difficult it is for women to achieve true equality when the system that we live in is based on that idea that we are less than them.
Exactly. And just a bit of a clarifier for the future. Lola is much better at framing my ideas. This is why we
Well,
complement each other, because I think of things and then I try to explain them. I don't go. That doesn't always go that
but I
way.
know what she means.
Exactly, and so she locks in and she tells them for me. So,
But also sometimes I'm just yapping.
I love your yapping.
There might be parts of this that don't really make sense where I'm just saying words, but that's what a podcast is.
Yeah,
We're still teenage girls.
we're also just started this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, we're just teenagers, and as you said, this is our first podcast. This is our first time doing this, our first episode even of the podcast. So, we'll get better.
Yeah, we'll lock in. But also, I feel like there's another thing of people only really learn about feminism in school.
Mm-hmm.
And as students, I'm not always locked in my classes. I like to, I don't know, doze off and do other things. But then there's also school never teaches you the severity of things. And also, since it is school, you kind of choose to ignore and you think, oh, this is boring.
Which I think doesn't help.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you learn about something that already the media, the men around you, all of these things are teaching you to hate, and you learn about it in school, that's not going to make you care about this thing more. In fact, it's going to make you hate it even more.
It's not about you're going to not care about it. You're going to dislike it.
Exactly, because you're forced to learn about it. And then you have that for all of the topics, and then on top of all the preconceived hate instilled upon you throughout your
preconceived notion. We love that word.
Yes. Preconceived notions will come up a lot, so get used to it.
Yeah.
We have these classes that are basically,
we call them
pronoun classes. Yeah, we call it pronoun class, but they're just like social justice class. I guess they teach us about consent and just like educating on that, which I think they're great classes that Ava and I find quite interesting.
Except when they stop us. We were doing a topic on pornography, and we had so many good points, and they didn't even let us get halfway through.
It was really disappointing. Annoying. We hear our classmates talk about this pronoun class, and I think teaching it in school in a way makes it worse, because not only do they hate, like I said, they hate these topics from beforehand, but then you're forcing us to sit in a circle and sit in silence while you awkwardly ask us questions about these things.
Yeah. And it's also because even if guys are interested or they do care, they can't show that around their friends.
Oh, exactly.
Or they're going to be called like
pussies
or like gay. But that's for a
different episode.
That's for a different episode. But it's like how teen boys like cult mentality. Love cult mentality. I don't love it.
It's interesting to
talk about because teen boys they rile each other up. Mm-hmm. I have cousins, and on their own they're okay. When you put all of them together, I'm like, oh my god, get me out of here. They tried to throw me off a cliff.
Oh.
And they threw a tree, like a literal tree, at me.
It's almost like they become an unpenetrable force, right? Mm-hmm. Because when you're one-on-one, you can make them... I mean, this applies to lots of things. When you're one-on-one with someone, you can almost make them feel bad when they speak in hateful ways, when they make you feel bad, especially when you know more about a topic than them, let's be honest. But when there's multiple, they can gang up on you. Yeah. And then suddenly all you're saying
they're just
about
louder than you, Mark.
Exactly, about how this isn't okay, whatever, it doesn't matter because they're being louder than you. There's more of them.
Exactly.
It's 3-1, 4-1, whatever.
Yeah. And as people, you don't want to complain about things that don't change, Mm-hmm. So when you're around a group of boys and they say something bad or they use their dark humor, oh my god, don't even get me started on dark humor. they say, oh, they're just once again they're boys. You can't change at the fact that they like to say slurs
Oh
and
yeah.
be racist. Don't you just love that? But
Boys will be boys, Ava.
exactly, boys will be boys. But it's just that, sure, it's kind of a rite of passage. Like, I do agree that it's kind of a rite of passage for
Oh
guys to
yeah.
be bad. But the difference is there's a rite of passage for a teenager as making mistakes and doing
Yeah.
bad things.
That's the thing. It's not boys will be boys, it's teenagers will be teenagers.
Teenagers
Are
will
gonna
be teenagers.
like the hormone, like scientifically, whatever. You can't stop that. Teenagers are going to be loud and annoying.
And they
Teenage
also
boys
are
are
going
going
to
to be
hate
loud and
things.
annoying.
Teenagers chemically like to hate things.
Oh yeah.
But the difference is you can channel that hate into different things. But what's wrong with the teenage boy experience is that we've just seen the things they channel their hate to are groups of people. Like,
Yeah.
what do I hate? I hate slugs. And I hate, oh, why is this hard to think of? I hate a lot of things.
I know.
What's one thing I hate? Oh,
I'm not thinking of
I'm
anything
blanking.
that's not like
We'll bring something
societal structure.
up. I hate society. I hate how expensive clothing is. I hate cargo sweatpants.
You hate bath products. What
I
I'm liking
hate
that aren't pink.
I hate any bath product that isn't pink.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I hate a lot of things, but it doesn't matter. The only thing that might matter are cargo sweatpants, but I'll die in the hill that those are ugly. They're horrendous. Like, as teenagers, and especially since we're girls, we're catty. We like to kind of hate on other people. I'm not saying teen girls are magical. They're almost like, they're literally evil. Evil. But, like,
teenagers are hateful people, but it's different when you're contributing that hate to a societal structure that
because it keeps
profits off the oppression of a whole group of people.
Because even though you might think, oh, it's just harmless, it's just between friends, or this, I don't care, it's even that little difference keeps perpetuating a stereotype or something that can be used to oppress a group. Just because you think you have no impact, that's just not true.
But don't get me wrong, there are jokes that are okay
we're not
to
saints
say.
either.
Yeah,
we make a lot of jokes too.
Everyone draws a line in a different place.
Yeah.
So I accept that not everyone's gonna have the same standards as I do, but it kind of has to be roughly in the same place, I would argue.
Yeah, because there's the whole conversation of dark
humor, and also like overwokeness, right? When you can't argue that people can't say anything, because then you actually are just like saying, keep your mouth shut. And that's not the point. What we're trying to do is restructure these jokes to make them not harmful. Yeah. So personally, what I consider an okay joke as a woman about misogyny is one that makes fun of misogyny, if that makes sense. So you're making a joke not at the expense of women, but you're almost mocking the people who do make those jokes unironically.
Exactly. That's a really
ironic
good way to
jokes. When even I like to say, when they're funny, it's okay.
Yeah. I don't remember what the joke was. There was this one joke that did we tell it or someone tell it to us?
I think you told it to me.
I think I told a joke that was, normally I wouldn't say something like that. It just kind of slipped out of me.
But it was hilarious.
But it was so funny that we couldn't be mad.
Right? Because you can tell, especially when you're part of the group that they're hating upon, you can tell when someone means something by a joke. You can tell when.
And also, when you're a part of a certain group, you can make more jokes on people. That's kind of a duh situation, though.
Well, duh situation, but also, like, we'll get into this in some of our later episodes. Just because you're part of a group doesn't mean you can't perpetuate harmful ideas about it. So. Oh my god, yeah. But that's a later topic. We can't get into that.
Candace Owens. We're gonna get doxxed. The Twitter users are coming up. There's just, what I hate about people is just saying, oh, it's dark humor. I have this friend. I like him a lot. He's very funny, and he's very easy to talk to. Me and him have kind of we've been through it a little bit, where he said a lot of things I disagree with. But we've been through it together. But now he knows not to say certain things around me, but it hasn't changed the fact that he thinks he can say it or not. It's that he knows that he can't say it around me. And to a certain degree that's okay, but then also they don't it's not good because then they don't actually care. They just don't want to be yelled at. And sometimes he says things because we'll be around a group of other people too. So I'm there, but also some of his guy friends are there. And I'll say things and I'm like, seriously, that was not that funny.
But
like,
it's that group mentality
but then
thing
he was
where
like,
they become
oh,
an
it's not that.
impenetrable
Yeah.
force.
And he's like, well, no, it is funny. It's just dark humor. You don't get it. Dark humor is saying like, there was this one comedy guy who was joking about a hate comedy guy. I was like, oh yeah, he's overweight, and somebody commented, oh yeah, is it just me or does this guy look like he broke into a bakery and ate all the pies? Have you seen that?
No.
And it's so funny. And then he's like, oh my god, if you're gonna send me a hate comment, then go for it. And like that was so weak. I'm just gonna reply him saying like, you know what? I'm gonna kill you with a gun. I will find you and shoot you dead.
We might have to
With
cut
a
this
gun.
out because it might be a little too like Spotify's gonna get mad at us for like
Spotify
content.
makes allows podcasts
That's
of
true.
people talking about little girls getting and murdered.
Oh, I should know. My mom listens to them in the
Oh my
kitchen.
god,
all
we're
the
going
time.
on. We're putting this on YouTube too.
Oh, that's
Shoot,
true.
we're gonna have to.
Maybe we'll have two different versions.
We'll have to censor. Yeah. So, and that was to me that's dark humor. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna shoot you dead with a gun. That's dark humor.
Dark humor is humor that
makes you go, oh.
Jokes about. I would say jokes about the irony of.
Oh yeah.
Of these situations.
I don't even know what dark humor is.
It's used so often as a word just for people to be racist and homophobic and
or just like
sexist and just be like, it's dark humor. I'm like
I don't even know what dark humor entails because I don't even think it exists if I'm being for real. Because we can't talk about like humor back in the day. Comedians was just all hating people. That's because being mean to other people is funny. People like being mean. But yeah, I don't know. Dark humor is a child.
I mean, Wikipedia says it's a style of comedy that makes light of subject matter that is generally considered taboo, particularly subjects that are normally considered serious or painful to discuss. So, jokes where that makes sense to me.
Yeah, dark
and
humor.
you can make jokes like that are not full of hate.
Yeah. Dark humor, I think, will forever be controversial because a big part of dark humor is suicide jokes and self-harm jokes.
Dark humor is humor that could offend someone.
Yeah.
So you do have to pick
forever
going to
be an acquired taste. But it's not just basically saying N-word, oh, that's just dark humor. No, you're just racist.
Exactly. I think there's nothing wrong with not saying things in front of people if you think that something could offend them. But like you said, censoring yourself in front of someone because you're scared they're going to get mad at you is not the same thing as evolving as a person and deconstructing ideas of hate in your brain.
Exactly.
And I think lots of people, when we make these arguments, like that person, like the friend of ours who has said some stuff to you, or even that other friend of ours who thinks a certain way about women that horrifies us a little bit.
We're like, what?
Like when we make these arguments in front of our other friends who don't think that way, they will argue. I've heard the argument, oh, but they don't, they don't say it in front of you or whatever. Oh, he stopped saying that. I'm like, but
why did you say it in the first place?
Why did you say it in the first place? Does he still say it in front of you? Do you accept that as normal behavior in front of yourself? It's important to ask men to just check themselves on their behavior and how the things that they're saying are perpetuating harmful ideas about women. Like, it is true that this is why it is difficult to call things out. I often feel like I have to pick and choose what I call out because eventually what you say loses credibility because you're the person who just gets offended at everything.
That's literally me. I'm like all about this year. I just kept like there's one guy that I wouldn't really call him my friend because I don't really interact with him all that much. And also sometimes I just have problems with him because he says and does a lot of things, and I've been calling him out a lot all year. And I think people just don't care anymore because I'm just the angry feminist who doesn't like to let them have fun. But then I'm also like, I don't care.
You did call it out.
Like, I don't care. Yeah, and I just get very intense. But yeah,
we got off track a little bit. I mean, as these podcasts do, it's not that big of a deal. But why men are so hateful towards women? I think it's easy when you benefit from a system.
Men don't. It's also so it's so
ingrained.
ingrained to have women be below you in one
Mm-hmm.
way or another. It may not look the same as it used to.
But that's the thing. It's not. Things have evolved, but it's still
Exactly.
the same system. So it's still ingrained
A
into
bird who
society.
evolved is still a bird.
Exactly. They benefit from the system, and I don't think they understand to what extent.
Especially when you're a teenager, because
Yeah.
when you're a teenager, a lot of the guys we know, they don't think very hard.
Mm-hmm.
They might think sometimes, but they don't think super in depth. In
No.
depth, at least the ones we know, and so they never really clock these things
Which is which they're not to blame for,
because,
I would argue.
well, yeah,
Because, when you benefit from a system, if you're not feeling the suppression,
why would you
in
think
that,
about it?
why would you think about it? Because you'd have no triggers to actually analyze your behavior, the way you were raised, all of this stuff that benefit to these harmful practices. But that's why talking to the women around you, if you're listening to our podcast, just think about the ways that it affects women. I mean, I don't know, we've talked to the important men and boys in our lives about just to what extent misogyny actually affects our lives.
Yeah, and they're surprised,
Mm-hmm.
which how else are they supposed to know? But you just have to listen. You have
Mm-hmm.
to put aside your ego and what you've learned, and you need to listen because it
Remind
all starts with one thing. We don't expect people to change right
No.
away. That would be wrong of us. But if someone really matters to you, and honestly, it's like people say, you can't don't try to convince ignorant people. You can't change stupid. That's what my dad says. um, and so don't try. But when it's someone who really matters to you, you should try to teach them at least a little, because
Mm-hmm.
they'll go through life and hopefully they'll mature and learn. But being a teenager, there's just so much pressure to be a certain way
Mm-hmm.
more than any other time in your
Exactly.
life. That
Conformity is such a huge factor in any teenager's life. And part of that for teenage boys is conforming to a misogynist
Yeah,
system.
and ideally in the future they would be conforming to being ripped, just ripped. I mean, I know they conform to being ripped now, but they conform to being ripped because being fat is ugly, or being skinny is like a woman. I don't know.
And I mean, there's also the part that, like, this comes down to toxic masculinity, right? They're taught that the feminine image is invalidating to their existence as a man.
And caring about feminism is like betraying men.
Mm-hmm.
It's
But
dishonoring.
but as you mentioned before, toxic masculinity affects men as well. When you're scared to, I
Affects
mean, I
men the
think
most.
I think, yeah, of course. But I think we'll have an episode on this individually. But just to summarize, if you're scared of the feminine image of femininity, you're also scared to act feminine yourself. And that does affect you in negative ways. Like, you can analyze how it hurts the women around you, but you can also analyze how thinking that femininity is inferior to you, how does that affect yourself?
Because that's just forever. Because you may not think that women themselves are bad, but it's the idea of what it is to be a woman is bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That you are just inherently superior is what you're taught.
Yeah,
It's what they're
because you
taught.
act a certain way that isn't the way a woman
hmm
acts.
And it's so easy to dismiss when called out, when it's the small things, because, we're not fighting for the right to vote anymore. We're fighting for the right for our opinions to be valued equally to a man's when we have equal credentials. But that's easy to call out. No, I believe my male friend over you because of this, because we're closer, because of this, because of that. But there's no way that every time I was dismissed, it was because of some random excuse. Sometimes you just believe the man over the woman.
Yeah, and yeah, actually, that's just everything comes down to toxic masculinity and conformity. But
Mm-hmm.
and then in a perfect, people often ask you what you want in a perfect world. This world is going to be perfect. We don't want the world to be perfect. We want the world to be better. The world will
Exactly.
never be perfect. And when it does be perfect, I think that's when the world is going to end. Because what makes us people in a society is that everybody's
Is
different.
yeah,
Because
exactly.
there's
And you can't have perfect without imperfections.
but you need, what we strive for is to be better.
To be
Because
better.
perfection doesn't exist. There's only better.
Exactly. So, check yourself.
Check yourself,
Try.
check your friends,
And
check your family.
Mhm. And realizing that you're conforming to a system doesn't mean that you have to stop, because
Yeah.
that's hard. Honestly, impossible.
We conform.
We conform. Everyone conforms, but you can still call out behaviors that are outlandishly, I don't know if that's a word, problematic, that you think every man contributes to this system, so you can try and contribute to it less.
Yeah, and also if you are a female too, it is possible you perpetuate these stereotypes
absolutely.
as well. So just no matter who you are, you don't need to do any reading or watch any videos, but just maybe take 10 minutes and think about how this affects you and how you affect it.
That's a good point. People will often say, like, we're interested in this stuff. We talk about it in our free time, right? Not everyone's going to be like us, but
It's
we
like
know that.
take like YouTube N-word apologies. I'm just not educated. You don't need to be educated. You just need to think. I don't care if you're not educated. It's a slur.
Like, of course, there are books and things you could watch to become an even better person, an even better ally.
But even sometimes we find those boring, but we watch it because we kind of gotta. It's important information.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I watch things and I'm like, well, this is kind of lame, but this is interesting.
It's the end product of you learning something is interesting, and that isn't the case for everyone. But I
find sports interesting.
I find it hard to believe that someone can be absolutely completely uninterested in this stuff, because the end product is bettering yourself, is making life easier for yourself, for the people that you love. I disagree with the argument that you should care about feminism because you have a wife, because you have a daughter, because you have an aunt and a mother. Like, I hate that phrase, but there is like an underlying subtext that is the truth, right? Like, for if you really find it so hard to be compassionate and make an effort to make the world better for women,
probably
at least do it for your kids.
Yeah, like you don't have to care about social issues, but to be I think everybody should strive to be an okay person.
Exactly.
People who want to be bad people, they're just like, I'm different, I hate people. Attention, people. They just want people, everybody hates you too. But if you strive to be an okay person, you don't have to be a good. I don't believe in people being everyone being a good person. If you want to be an okay or a passable human being, you shouldn't care about everything, but you gotta care about things at least because everybody's telling you to care. Even if you can't find it in you to actually understand, what everybody's telling you to, so just do it.
Although that is to say, just because you're not the worst person, the worst misogynist just because
Me when I'm not the worst, me when I hate women, but somebody hates women more than I do.
No, but it's a fair point. Like, just because you know people who hate women more than you doesn't mean you have nothing to change.
Doesn't mean you also don't hate a woman.
Like, when we say
a gun's still a gun.
Exactly. When we say every man, it kind of means every man, and that doesn't mean you have to feel like an awful person. But it does
also
feel like it does mean that every man contributes to a system.
Yeah, we don't hate men, by the way.
Oh no, of course not.
Well, sometimes I do. But once again, I'm a hater, so. But yeah, this isn't an attack on men. This episode isn't an attack on men.
Of course
it's just sharing our experiences and our opinions. But with that, I think we're gonna wrap up this first episode.
Well, thank you for listening.
Thank you. Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to us. Feel free to give us commentary on what you think we could do better.
Of course.
What you enjoyed. Hate comments will be deleted and you will be blocked because guess what? We don't care. Or maybe we even leave them. I'll reply with a middle finger. Yeah. If you hate us, please keep interacting with our content.
Hopefully we'll see you in episode 2.
Yes! Okay, well, see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.